Kiwanda was a village where traditions were sacred and power was passed down through generations. At its heart stood Chief Oduma, a man of great influence and wisdom. He had 2 children from different wives, Palesa, the daughter of his first wife who had passed away, and Ntwala, the son of his second wife, Baturi. While both children shared the same father, their lives were vastly different. Palesa was loved by many in the village. She was kind-hearted, intelligent, and carried herself with grace. From a young age, she showed wisdom beyond her years, always helping the elderly, tending to the sick, and showing compassion even to those who had little to offer her in return. Chief Oduma admired her deeply, seeing in her the qualities of a true leader. He often praised her, telling the elders of Kiwanda that she would grow to be a great woman who would bring honor to their family, but not everyone shared in his admiration. Baturi, the chief's second wife, watched with jealousy as Palesa won the hearts of the villagers. In her mind, it was her son, Ntwala, who should be receiving all the attention, all the love, and most importantly, all the power. She despised how Chief Oduma favored Palesa and how the elders spoke highly of her. It should have been Ntwala they looked upon with pride. He was the son of the chief, after all. Slowly, Baturi began to poison Ntwala's mind with hatred. She whispered to him in the dead of night, filling his heart with resentment. She told him that Palesa would steal everything from him, that their father cared for her more, that the village would one day choose her over him. She convinced him that unless he acted, he would be left with nothing. Ntwala, once a boy who had loved his stepsister, began to see her as a threat. At first, his jealousy was quiet, hidden behind forced smiles and polite words. But deep inside, a darkness was growing. He started finding small ways to make her life difficult, hiding her belongings, spreading small lies, making her doubt herself. Yet, no matter what he did, Palesa remained kind. She never fought back, never suspected that her own stepbrother harbored such hatred toward her. But Baturi wanted more. She wanted Palesa gone, erased from their lives forever. And so, she planted a sinister idea in Ntwala's mind, an idea so cruel that it would change everything. If Palesa was to disappear, it had to be in a way that no one would suspect. It had to be slow, silent, undetectable. It had to be poison. And Ntwala listened. Ntwala had always known Palesa as his sister. They had grown up in the same household, played in the same courtyards, and shared laughter under the vast skies of Kiwanda. But as the years passed, something changed. His mother, Baturi, whispered things to him, dark, twisted words that made his heart grow cold. She told him that Palesa was not his true sister, that she was nothing more than a rival who would one day take everything meant for him. At first, he didn't believe it. Palesa was kind, always smiling, always gentle. She treated him like family, but Baturi was relentless. Night after night, she fed him the same poison, not the kind that weakens the body, but the kind that rots the soul. She told him that their father loved Palesa more, that the villagers respected her more, that when Chief Oduma's time was over, it would be her who stood in the light while he was cast into the shadows. The thought consumed him. He began watching her differently, no longer seeing a sister but an enemy, and yet he didn't show it. Ntwala was clever. He knew he couldn't let his hatred be seen. So he smiled at Palesa, spoke to her with warmth, and played the role of the loving brother. She never suspected a thing. She trusted him completely. But behind his mask, he was planning. Baturi had told him that Palesa needed to disappear, but not in a way that would cause suspicion. If she died suddenly, questions would be asked. But if she faded slowly, if her body weakened over time, no one would think it was anything other than illness. And so, Ntwala chose his weapon, poison. He started small, mixing tiny amounts into her food and drink. It wasn't enough to kill her, not right away. That wasn't the plan. The poison worked slowly, attacking her from within, making her weaker by the day. At first, it was just tiredness. Palesa would feel exhausted even after a full night's sleep. Then came the dizziness, the moments when the world around her seemed to spin. Her once lively spirit began to dim. She no longer laughed as often, no longer ran through the fields as she used to. The villagers noticed. They whispered among themselves, wondering if she had been cursed, if the spirits were angry with her. Chief Oduma grew worried, calling for healers, but none could find the cause of her sickness. Palesa herself couldn't understand what was happening. She tried to stay strong, but every day the poison drained her, and all the while, Ntwala watched. He pretended to be concerned, bringing her food, sitting by her side, telling her everything would be fine, and she believed him. She had no idea that the very person she trusted the most was the one slowly destroying her from within. Palesa had always been full of life, her presence like the morning sun that warmed the hearts of those around her. But something was changing. At first, it was barely noticeable. A yawn here, a moment of exhaustion there. She brushed it off, thinking she had simply been working too hard, or that the heat of the day was making her tired. But soon, the tiredness refused to leave her. She would wake up feeling drained, as if she had not slept at all. Her hands trembled when she tried to lift a pot of water. Her legs felt heavy, making even short walks exhausting. She started losing her balance, her vision sometimes blurring, and more than once, she collapsed in the middle of a conversation. People rushed to help her, their faces filled with concern, but no one knew what was happening. The villagers began to whisper among themselves. Some said she was cursed. Others believed the spirits were punishing her for an unknown sin. But Palesa had done nothing wrong. She was kind to everyone, always offering a helping hand. Why would the spirits be angry with her? Chief Oduma was deeply troubled. His once strong daughter was fading before his eyes, and no one could explain why. He called for Elder Wamiri, the village's most trusted healer, a man who had cured countless illnesses with his knowledge of herbs and ancient remedies. Elder Wamiri examined Palesa, checked her pulse, and studied her symptoms. He crushed leaves into pastes, brewed bitter drinks, and performed cleansing rituals, but nothing worked. Days passed, then weeks, and still, Palesa's condition worsened. "She is not suffering from any sickness, I know," Elder Wamiri admitted, shaking his head. "This is something different, something unseen." His words sent a chill through the household. If even the great healer did not understand what was happening, what hope was there? Chief Oduma could not bear to see his daughter suffer any longer. Desperate, he turned to the spiritual leaders of the village, hoping they could provide an answer where medicine had failed. They gathered in the great hall, chanting prayers, burning sacred herbs, and asking the ancestors for guidance. But the spirits remained silent. No visions came, no answers were revealed. It was as if the heavens themselves refused to speak on Palesa's fate. And so, her suffering continued. Each day, she grew weaker, her body betraying her while her mind struggled to hold on. And through it all, Ntwala watched, his heart cold, his face painted with fake concern. No one suspected that the poison was coming from within the very home they sought answers from. The sun hung low in the sky when a stranger arrived in Kiwanda. His name was Keano, a healer who travelled from village to village, carrying nothing but a small satchel filled with herbs and an air of mystery. His clothes were worn from the long journey, and his eyes held the wisdom of someone who had seen more than he cared to share. He was not an ordinary man. There was something about him that made people stop and take a second glance. As he walked through the village, he heard whispers of a young woman whose health was fading, a girl once full of life, now slipping away for reasons no one could explain. Curiosity pulled him forward. When he finally saw Palesa, he stopped in his tracks. Her face was pale, her once bright eyes dull with exhaustion. He watched her carefully, noticing the slight tremor in her hands, the way she struggled to stay upright even while sitting. He had seen this before. It was not an illness, nor a curse. It was poison. The realization sent a chill down his spine. He had treated victims of slow poisoning before, people whose loved ones had turned against them, feeding them death in small, invisible doses. And now, here in Kiwanda, he was seeing it again. But who would do such a thing to this innocent girl? Keano wasted no time. He went straight to Chief Oduma and told him what he had observed. "Your daughter is not sick," he said firmly. "Someone is poisoning her." The words struck the chief like a thunderclap. Poison? In his own home? The thought was unbearable. But before he could question further, Ntwala stepped in. His face twisted in shock, but deep inside, his heart pounded with fear. This stranger was a threat. If the truth came out, everything he had done, all his careful planning, would be exposed. He had to act fast. "Father, do not listen to this man," Ntwala said, his voice filled with urgency. "We do not know him. He is an outsider. Who is to say he is not the one trying to harm Palesa? Perhaps he wants to gain your trust, only to betray us later." Chief Oduma hesitated. Keano was a stranger after all. Could he be trusted? The idea of poisoning was horrifying, but accusing someone in his own household without proof was just as dangerous. Ntwala saw his father's uncertainty and pressed further. "We have wise elders and healers in Kiwanda," he continued. "If none of them have discovered this so-called poison, why should we believe a man who just walked into our village?" The doubt settled deep in the chief's mind. He turned back to Keano, his eyes filled with suspicion. "You bring serious accusations against my family," he said. "Do you have proof?" Keano clenched his fists. He knew what he saw. He knew Palesa was being poisoned, but without evidence, without catching the culprit in the act, his words were nothing more than air. He glanced at Ntwala, who stood beside his father with a face full of false concern. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of something dark, something hidden. But Keano was not foolish. He had dealt with deception before. If he was right, and someone was truly trying to kill Palesa, then he would find the proof. He had to, because if he failed, it would only be a matter of time before she took her last breath. Keano knew he had no time to waste. Palesa's life was slipping away, and if he did not act quickly, the poison would claim her completely. But he also knew that openly accusing someone, especially someone as cunning as Ntwala, would only put himself in danger. He had to be smart. Each day, he found ways to introduce an antidote into Palesa's meals. A few drops of a special herbal extract mixed into her porridge, a pinch of crushed leaves stirred into her evening soup, small, undetectable doses to counteract the poison without raising suspicion. Slowly, the effects began to show. Palesa, who had once struggled to stand, found strength in her legs again. Her skin, which had been pale and lifeless, started to regain its warmth. The light in her eyes returned. At first, Ntwala did not notice the change. But when Palesa stopped collapsing, when she started walking without help, a deep panic gripped him. How was she recovering? He had been poisoning her for months. Was the poison not strong enough? Was she somehow fighting it off? Fear turned to desperation. If the poison was not working fast enough, he would simply increase the dosage. And so, he did. Each day he added more and more of the deadly substance into her meals, convinced that it would finally overpower her body. But Keano was watching. He saw the growing tension in Ntwala's eyes, the way he hovered around Palesa's meals, always ensuring she ate every bite. He knew what was happening, and he was ready to end it once and for all. The next evening, when the servants prepared Palesa's food, Keano made his move. He secretly swapped the poisoned meal with another plate, one meant for Ntwala. Then, he watched and waited. Ntwala sat at the table, his mind at ease, believing that tonight would be the night Palesa's body finally gave up. He ate his meal without a second thought, unaware of the deadly trap he had walked into. Minutes passed. Then, suddenly his hands started shaking. His vision blurred. A sharp pain shot through his stomach, and before he could even call for help, his body convulsed violently. He crashed to the ground, his limbs twisting in pain, foam forming at his lips. Gasps filled the room. Servants screamed. Chief Oduma rushed to his son's side, his face filled with horror. "What is happening?" he demanded. But deep down, he already knew. Keano stepped forward, his voice calm yet firm. "This is the same poison that has been in Palesa's body for months," he said. "But tonight, it did not reach her. It went to the hands that have been feeding it to her instead." A heavy silence filled the room. The truth had finally come to light. As Ntwala writhed on the floor, gasping for breath, chaos erupted in the chief's household. Servants ran in all directions, unsure of what to do, while Chief Oduma knelt beside his son, his face twisted in shock and confusion. "What is happening to him?" the chief demanded, his voice thick with panic. Keano, standing firm, did not flinch. "The same thing that has been happening to Palesa," he said calmly. "Only now, the poison has found its rightful owner." A stunned silence fell over the room. The villagers who had gathered at the doorway whispered among themselves. Could it be true? Had someone been poisoning Palesa all this time? If so, then who? Ntwala's convulsions grew weaker, his body trembling from the effects of the poison. The elders of Kiwanda, hearing the commotion, rushed in. Their wise eyes scanned the room, taking in the scene before them. Elder Wamiri, the oldest among them, raised his hand, commanding silence. "Ntwala," he said in a deep, commanding voice, "tell us the truth. Who did this?" Sweat dripped from Ntwala's forehead. His body was weak, his mind clouded, and in his desperation, his carefully built lies crumbled. He tried to fight it, to hold on to the last shreds of his deception, but the poison weakened him, making it impossible to maintain his usual composure. I did it," he gasped. His voice cracked under the weight of his confession. I poisoned her. Every day. Gasps filled the air. The villagers, the servants, even Chief Oduma himself, looked at Ntwala in shock and disbelief. The golden son of the chief, the one who was supposed to lead Kiwanda one day, had been the snake in their midst. Elder Wamiri's eyes darkened. And why would you do such a thing to your own sister? Ntwala let out a weak, bitter laugh. Because she was always the favorite. He spat. Father loved her more. He saw her as the true heir. I was nothing to him as long as she was in the way. His breathing was ragged now, his body barely able to hold itself up. So I did what I had to do. I made her weak. I made sure she would never take what was mine. A sudden wail broke through the room. Baturi, his mother, pushed forward, her eyes wide with desperation. No, he is lying. Someone is manipulating him, she cried, turning to Chief Oduma. My son would never do such a thing. He has been poisoned against us. This is a trick. But the elders had heard enough. The weight of Ntwala's own confession was too heavy to ignore. Chief Oduma, still on his knees beside his son, looked up at Baturi, his eyes filled with something beyond anger, disgust. This is your doing, he said quietly, but the pain in his voice carried through the room like a blade. You filled his heart with hatred. You made him believe he had to destroy his own sister to earn my love. Baturi shook her head furiously, but no one stood by her side. The villagers had seen enough. The truth had been laid bare, and there was no more room for lies. Elder Wamiri turned to the other elders. Justice must be served, he declared, and with that, the fate of the wicked was sealed. Chief Oduma sat frozen, his face hollow with disbelief. His own son, his own flesh and blood, had been feeding poison to Palesa, the daughter he had cherished. And Baturi, the woman he had once trusted, had been the hand that planted the seed of hatred in Ntwala's heart. The weight of the betrayal crushed him, and when he finally spoke, his voice was cold and final. They will not stay in this village, he declared. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Banishment was the worst punishment in Kiwanda, worse than any beating or imprisonment. To be cast out into the wilderness, to survive alone without the protection of the village, was a fate worse than death. Baturi dropped to her knees, her face streaked with tears. No, my husband, please, have mercy, she wailed, clutching at his feet. I only did what any mother would do. I wanted to protect my son. I wanted him to have what was rightfully his. Oduma wrenched his leg away, his expression hard. What was rightfully his? He repeated, his voice trembling with rage. You did not protect him. You destroyed him. You filled his heart with poison, just as surely as he poisoned Pelesa's body. The elders stood firm, their decision made. Elder Wamiri stepped forward. Justice must be served, he said. You and your son will leave this village. You will walk into the wilderness, and whatever fate awaits you, there will be yours to bear. Baturi screamed. She turned to the villagers, pleading, but they only looked at her with cold eyes. She had spent years scheming, manipulating, tearing down an innocent girl out of jealousy. Now, she had no allies, no friends, no mercy. Ntwala, weak and barely able to stand, watched the scene unfold in horror. His whole life he had believed himself untouchable, the future ruler of Kiwanda. Now, he was nothing, a criminal, a traitor, a man without a home. Desperation seized him. He would not go down like this. With a sudden burst of energy, he turned and ran. He ran past the shocked villagers, past the elders, past his father's burning stare. He ran toward the village gates, toward freedom, but his body betrayed him. The poison had weakened him too much. His legs gave out just as he reached the edge of the village. With a strangled gasp, he collapsed into the dirt, his chest heaving, his vision fading. Baturi rushed to him, sobbing, shaking his shoulders. Get up, my son. We have to leave. But Ntwala could not move. His body had failed him, just as his own wickedness had. The villagers watched in silence as mother and son, once so proud, now lay broken at the edge of the land they could no longer call home. Their fate was sealed. The wilderness awaited. The wilderness was merciless. Baturi and Ntwala wandered through the dry, barren land, their bodies exhausted, their spirits shattered. There was no shelter, no food, and no water, only the scorching sun above and the endless stretch of land before them. Ntwala, once strong and arrogant, was now nothing more than a shadow of himself. His body had been weakened by the very poison he had used to destroy Palesa. Each step was a battle, his legs trembling, his breath shallow. His mother, once a woman of power, was now reduced to begging the heavens for mercy. Days passed, and their hunger grew unbearable. Ntwala's skin clung to his bones, his vision blurred with weakness. His mother tried to find food, but there was nothing but dry twigs and bitter roots that could barely sustain them. Desperation pushed Baturi toward a distant village she had heard of, a place where traders and travelers passed through. With the last of her strength, she stumbled into the village. Her clothes torn, her face streaked with dust and sweat, she fell to her knees before the villagers, pleading for food, for water, for kindness. But the moment they saw her face, their expressions darkened. News of her betrayal had spread beyond Kiwanda. People knew her as the woman who had turned her own son into a murderer, who had tried to kill an innocent girl out of greed. The villagers, disgusted, turned on her in rage. "She is a traitor," one man shouted. "She tried to kill Chief Oduma's daughter," another woman cried. Before Baturi could explain, stones and sticks were hurled in her direction. The villagers chased her out, their shouts of anger ringing in her ears. She ran, stumbling, gasping for breath, until she was far from the village. When she returned to Ntwala, her hands were empty. There was no food, no water, no hope. Her son, the boy she had molded into a weapon, now lay curled in the dirt, his body too weak to move. His breath was ragged, his eyes barely open. "Mother," he croaked, his lips dry and cracked. I can't." Baturi knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. She held him in her arms, rocking him gently. "You will be fine, my son. Just hold on, just a little longer." But even as she spoke, she knew the truth. The very poison he had used on Palesa was now devouring him from the inside. He had increased the dosage, thinking he could break his sister, but in the end, he had only sealed his own fate. Karma had struck, and there was no escaping it. Back in Kiwanda, life slowly returned to normal. But for Palesa, everything had changed. She had been on the brink of death, betrayed by the very people she once trusted. Yet, she had survived. Not only that, she had grown stronger. The poison that was meant to break her had instead made her wiser, more resilient. She was no longer the same innocent girl who blindly believed in love and family. Now, she understood the depths of envy, the cruelty that could fester in a person's heart. But more than anything, she understood the power of justice. As she walked through the village, the people whispered about her. They no longer saw her as just Chief Oduma's daughter. They saw her as someone who had conquered death itself. Women admired her strength. Men spoke of her resilience. Even the elders acknowledged that she had faced a trial no one else had ever endured. Chief Oduma, weighed down by guilt, stood before his daughter, his eyes filled with regret. "I failed you, Palesa," he admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "I should have protected you. I should have seen the truth." Palesa looked at him, the father she had always loved, and though the pain lingered, she knew that anger would serve no purpose. "You were blinded by love for your son," she said gently. "But now, the truth has been revealed." Oduma bowed his head, ashamed, but grateful for her forgiveness. He vowed never to ignore the wisdom of his people again. He would lead Kiwanda with open eyes, with justice, and with fairness. Keano, the man who had saved Palesa's life, had become a mystery in the village. Many wondered where he had come from, how he had known the truth when no one else did. The whispers grew louder until the elders finally called upon him to tell his story. With a calm but powerful voice, Keano revealed his past. He had once been the royal healer of a distant kingdom, known for his knowledge of medicine and rare poison. But envy had followed him, just as it had followed Palesa. He had been falsely accused of treason by those who feared his wisdom, and he had been exiled, forced to wander from land to land, never finding a place to belong. But fate had brought him to Kiwanda, where he had been given a chance to do what he had always done, save lives. And in saving Palesa, he had also saved himself. Chief Oduma, deeply moved by his story, stood before the entire village and declared, "From this day forward, Keano is one of us. He is no longer an exile. He is a son of Kiwanda, a healer, and a man of honor." The villagers cheered, and for the first time in years, Keano felt the warmth of belonging. He had come to Kiwanda as a stranger, but now he would stay as a respected man. Palesa, grateful for the second chance at life he had given her, stepped forward. "Keano, this village will always need someone like you. Stay, and let us build a new future together." And with that, justice was served, not just against those who had wronged Palesa, but for Keano, who had finally found the redemption he had long searched for. Years passed, and Kiwanda flourished under new leadership. The village, once bound by rigid traditions, witnessed something unprecedented. Palesa, the girl who had been poisoned and left for dead, rose to become its first female chief. Her journey had been one of suffering and betrayal, but it had also forged her into a leader unlike any before her. She ruled not with fear or favoritism, but with wisdom and fairness, ensuring that no child in Kiwanda would ever face the cruelty she had endured. Under her leadership, the village thrived. She restructured the council, allowing women a voice in decisions that had once been dominated by men. She encouraged the teaching of justice, kindness, and the dangers of unchecked envy. Elders often gathered the younger generations to tell them the cautionary tale of Ntwala and Battery, the mother and son consumed by their own hatred. The story of their downfall became a lesson passed down for generations. Children sat around the fire at night, wide-eyed, as their parents and grandparents recounted how greed had turned Ntwala against his own sister, how poison had slowly drained the life from Palesa, and how justice had ultimately prevailed. It was a story of darkness, but also of hope. The truth may be buried for a time, the elders would say, their voices solemn, but like the sun, it will always rise. Pelesa's legacy was not just in the policies she changed or the fairness she brought to Kiwanda, it was in the hearts of the people. Women who once feared their voices being silenced now spoke freely. Families taught their children the importance of honesty, loyalty, and standing against injustice. And every time someone tried to deceive or manipulate, the village would remember, evil may hide in the shadows, but it can never escape the light. And so, the story of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate triumph lived on, not as a memory of pain, but as a beacon of truth for all who would come after. Life has a way of revealing the truth, no matter how deeply it is buried. Palesa suffered at the hands of those she called family, poisoned not just in body but in spirit by betrayal. Yet, even in her weakest moments, destiny had greater plans for her. She rose from the ashes of her suffering, proving that kindness, resilience, and truth will always triumph over deceit. But ask yourself, how many people around us suffer in silence, betrayed by those they trust the most? How many are fighting battles they don't even understand? Pelesa's story is not just a tale from the past, it is a lesson for today. Never let envy poison your heart, never let lies shape your destiny, and never ignore the silent cries of the innocent. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel the weight of betrayal and the power of justice, then don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Let them know that no matter how dark their days may seem, the truth will always bring light. Like this video, share it with your friends and family, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Every story holds a lesson, and together, we can spread these lessons far and wide. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and always choose truth over lies.